Right now, we will be starting with the the screening of the two films. The first film we'll be showing is Wrought, and the second film we'll be showing is Wrought. They sound very similar, so please don't get confused. Wrought blurs the boundaries between beauty and grotesque. By seeing mold as a kind of beautiful flower, the artist appreciates its gradual growth that requires a specific, conducive environment to flourish, ironically, much like the monstrous nature of corruption. In Wrought, they use mold and decay as a material metaphor for the levels of corruption in South Africa, as well as the impact that this has on the social issues in the country. By using mold as a signifier of decay, the artist points to the way in which processes of deterioration take place over time, rather than happening in a sudden or immediate way. Wrought, which is the second film we'll be showing, is a visual exploration of decay that begs questions about our relationships with other species. This short film begins with that universal moment of disappointment. Despite all efforts, our food has gone bad. But instead of turning away in disgust, the film zooms in with curiosity through time-lapse photography. Wrought explores how we construct categories in the world. It examines the categories of spoil, ferment, compost, and rot, coaxing audiences to decompose the binary of human and non-human. Welcome everyone again to Intra-actions Part 4. Just to reiterate, I am Dineo Diphofa. I work at vRot, and I'll be moderating the talk today, which falls under our Intra-action series. It is the fourth iteration of a series of engagements initiated by the University of Johannesburg's newly established Creative Microbiology Research Colab, also known as the CMRC. This is the first bioart creative research program and laboratory in Africa. I'll start quickly by giving some background and context on the CMRC. It is a collaboration between vRot, which is the Visual Identities in Art and Design Research Center, located in the Faculty of Art, Design and Architecture, and the WHRC, the Water and Health Research Center, located in the Faculty of Health Sciences at UJ. Fundamentally, these are two very different research strands, one being in visual arts and the other being in microbiology and water sanitation. The CMRC is an interdisciplinary and interfaculty collaboration which focuses on bioart and design, creative practices using living and non-living matter as media, and specializes in the intersection of art design and microbiology using bacteria, mycelium, yeast, and slime mold as our primary organisms. For the fourth iteration in its series of interactions, the University of Johannesburg CMRC has teamed up with Goethe and the Science Film Festival to present an evening of short film screenings, which we've just seen now, followed by a discussion between the artist and the curator, which we are doing at this present moment. We have just watched Wrought, which is a film produced and directed by Joel Penner and Anna Sigrithur that uses scanners, microscopes, and cameras to create a time-lapse film that examines how Wrought has the ability to transgress the false binaries between species and also between the living and the non-living. Additionally, Wrought is a video documentary of the live artwork by Nelly, who we have graciously seated here to my left, who uses movement, sound, staging, costume, and the physical body to explore how Wrought permeates the very bodies and minds of the South African nation state. Both these works acknowledge that Wrought is both creator and destroyer, both physical and metaphoric, and thus question our relationships with ourselves, our psyches, and the world around us. Both Nelly's live artwork, which was commissioned by the CMRC, as well as the Senses exhibition, are concerned with the definitions of materialities, our sensory engagement with these, and how process-based practice tries to synthesize greater understanding of this ephemerality. An example of this was the Symbio art show that we held in July of this year at the Fodder Gallery. So you can visit the VRot website for more information on that. And also on that note, this portion of the talk is recorded, so you'll be able to watch this recording on the vRot website as well. Nelly is a performance artist, dancer, choreographer, and vRot research associate. She received a scholarship to study at the Johannesburg Dance Foundation, as well as the Rambin School of Ballet and Contemporary Dance in London, and worked with the PAC Dance Company, as well as the Free Flight Dance Company. Nelly participated in the 2013 Venice Biennale at the South African Pavilion, performing adaptations from the Venus, and was awarded the F&B Art Prize for the Uncles and Angels film created with Maka J. Van Vuren that same year. Kamogelo is a multidisciplinary artist and curator whose research interests are in intersectionality, identity, Black excellence, and memory. She was awarded the Marshall Kanda Drama for Life Award for outstanding research in HIV/AIDS education through applied drama and theatre. She holds multiple degrees from both WITS and UJ and is currently pursuing her master's at the former, and is completing a residency at Bag Factory in addition to participating in the Young Curator Incubator for Goethe-Institut in collaboration with UCT's Michaela School of Fine Art. Yes, very impressive. Before we begin, just to get some housekeeping out of the way, we will allocate about 30 minutes for this talk, and then we will reserve an additional 10 to 15 minutes for any questions or insights, contemplations, or whatnot from the audience. And then I'd also like to reiterate that if you are interested in the program that vRot and CMRC has lined up for next year, please remember to leave your contact details on the mailing list form at the front desk before you leave. All right, so I first have an opening question. This is for the both of you. Wrought's unique approach, zooming in on decay instead of averting from it, offers a different perspective on the relationship between humans and the natural world, and how it might influence audience perceptions and attitudes towards decay and interconnectedness. If we use this as a metaphor for examining our relationship between viewers and the white cube, how do you think your respective projects relate to the idea of interconnectedness and disrupting viewers' relations to an environment? An example of this would be Nelly, for example, staging a performance in an old, unused lab, or for you in particular, as a creator of an exhibition where we've disrupted the experience of simply just viewing an artwork. There's an experience that one is able to touch and to feel.
It's a long question. Where do I start? I mean, it was, everything is always a process, to the final outcome of the performance. But because, I think because the initiate of vRot came from the invitation of the exhibition around bioart, which I was kind of nervous about because my knowledge of biology is really limited and science. But in a way, I'm always quite curious and like to take some risk and get lost. I arrived at my obsession with the question of corruption and then I thought Wrought, actually Wrought is biology, and but for me, what was more fascinating was, the social aspect of Wrought. Then I thought, the two ideas would be, in a way, perfect for the performance. Then I started researching on the biological sense of Wrought, including small interviews with the scientists at the biolab, who then, advised me to, I think already before I was interested in, I love costume, or I love fashion, or I love material. But it wasn't just going to be any material, and the material needed to be influenced by the process. So in a way, I started with the process of just molding bread. And for me, just watching that was informing the social aspect of Wrought itself. And then costume or set, if you want to see it as set. I think it plays both roles. Yeah, I think I'll stop here for now.
And how have you felt your performance has disrupted the kind of typical or conventional ways in which people would view your work? I know you use the word set, which I think is very closely tied to the idea of the theatre and of performance. But in this case, you're using an old, unused lab in a university. And so it's not so much just a set, there's also a comment that's being made on that in the kind of the larger scheme of things.
Yeah, I guess another name for set is scenography, and then scenography, it's a question of terminology. Scenography plays actually on both spaces, in the visual art space and in the theatre. Yeah, I decided to create an environment of the lab, which also speaks to the environment of corruption. And then, it was an amazing space, which I say it's an amazing space because it will be difficult to to redo the space in a black box, and by black box I mean the theater, which in a way it's my preferred space. Don't be offended, visual art space. So anyway, I created, and it had 4 pillars, which was perfect. So I created a kind of laboratory with plastic. So the whole space, the whole environment was closed up. So the audience was sitting on 2 opposite sides and not the 4. And then inside the space, there was a small little stage which was mirrored, and and then I guess if you want to call it sound, I guess it is sound. But there was a live video of a ASMR artist, Josh. What's Josh's surname?
Joshua Brayton Arnold.
Yeah, I don't know why he uses so many names like me. Anyway, so so Josh was also inside almost. I suppose he kind of took on the role of a surgeon in a lab or a scientist.
I mean, we can speak more about it nearing the end. I do have a set of questions that's more geared towards the kind of conceptual, or rather the conceptualizing of the live artwork itself. So please don't reveal too much. We don't want anyone to leave before we've got into the good bits. How do you feel about how you've conceptualized the exhibition in the ways that it's disrupting the viewer's relationship to the environment that they're in?
Like, you know, when you enter a gallery space or an institution or a museum, they have this fourth wall, or you have to stand in a certain position and you have to look at the art and then go to the next one, right? And if you're going to be creating something about the five senses, essentially, you need to sort of decolonize the way that institutions such as galleries and museums are displaying artworks. And that's what I did with Senses, you know. Essentially, people come in and it becomes interactive. You know, you have to be able to touch it. You have to be able to see it, to hear it, to sort of deconstruct and decolonize the way that the practice of like gallery spaces and museum spaces are, you know. So essentially, that's what Senses is about. It's about decolonizing it, sort of breaking that fourth wall, so that people can be able to interact with the art, right? And the moment you're able to interact with the art, there's a pulse that happens, you know, because it's not every single day you get inside a gallery space or museum space and you're able to feel or touch an artwork. You know, something happens. The heart feels an impulse. There's frequencies that happens. The sort of the neuroscience work happens, you know, like memories flash back, the way that the way, let's say you're touching Brian's work inside that box. When you're touching it, something essentially happens. You feel something, and a memory just sort of flashes back, you know. So that's what I essentially wanted with Senses, you know. And it's doing its thing the way it's doing its thing. And I really like that people are getting in and sort of like touching it, feeling it, hearing it, and creating that impulse and those frequencies within themselves, you know. I think I spoke about it during the walkabout, about what social practice is, right? I essentially believe that for an artist to be able to create the best practice for their work is to have a relationship with them. When an artist goes inside their space, a lot happens, you know, like feelings happen, labor happens, endless nights of them creating the artwork happens, and you need to respect that space that they get into, right? And for an artist to be able to trust you, you need to have a relationship with them. And I'm not saying that a relationship is essentially about sort of it being super emotional and then it's this therapeutic space or whatever the case may be. It's about them trusting you as a curator. And the moment that they trust you as a curator, there's this, I can't really explain it, man, when I get into the space. And like, it's like this wall just sort of breaks down, you know, and you can sort of like tap into why they create that work. I really, really cannot explain it. I feel like it's something that every single curator sort of needs to find that balance for them to be able to have that relationship with the artist, you know. So it's a thing of like care. An artist matter. Their work matters. It's not about just me essentially coming into the space and looking at the artwork and saying, I'm going to select this, this, and this, and this. It's a process. They're going through something every single day when they're creating this work to come into your little white cube space. So you need to respect that. You need to make sure that they matter. You need to make sure that they feel important, and essentially this, I don't know, this volcano, this ball of like amazing work, sometimes not really amazing work, depends really what you think amazing is, sort of bubbles up and comes out because of that relationship and respect and making sure that the artist matter creates,
And then on that note, usually in biology, when we speak about an ecosystem, we speak about the relationships between the organisms within it. And sometimes those relationships could be parasitic, they could be beneficial for both parties. So in the dynamic between artist and curator, you've explained quite beautifully how artists benefit from building that trust with the curator. Then that kind of prompts me to think, okay, what is the curator going to get out of it as well? How does this dynamic affect you as the curator?
That's a difficult one, actually. I've never really thought about it like that.
Just think of it as a provocation of sorts.
How
does it make you feel?
Yeah, I think I have it. Like as I'm like, it's going to be an I statement because every curator is different, so this is how I sort of see and build the world, so as they as they're building they work and that process sort of happens, I sort of see how it's going to look like in the space, so I can shift things and see how it's going to look like, so that, okay, if essentially I wanted the work to be, I'll just be very layman about this. If the work essentially needs to be on the left-hand side, and now that I come into the studio again, and now it needs to shift somewhere else, it shifts somewhere else. So it essentially creates a thing of like, every single time I see their work or we have that conversation, it helps me shift the work into the space. So my thinking with their work is always, it's like I bring the lab and I bring the gallery with me. In the space as well, so it shifts as we have the conversations as well. I hope people got that. I really can't explain my process.
That's okay. How much? Okay, so let me just move on quickly to the next question. I don't want us to run out of time. When we look at objects in the state of rot or rotting, the element of time in tenses is very significant to sense, to be sensing, to have sensed, right? So as a curator, how have you negotiated the concept of time in the conception of the exhibition?
The concept of time, it's constantly coming into the space. In as much as you have the exhibition map or how the gallery looks like, it's constantly coming into the space, constantly going and having a look at the artwork. It's negotiating how the programming is going to look like and how the exhibition is going to grow outside of it being in the gallery space as well, So timing is it's how the audience see it, and it's how the process is before as well. So it all just sort of relates and doesn't really relate.
Yeah.
I
really like that answer because you use the word process, and at UJ we really do make a huge emphasis on process, on how the process informs the practice and how the practice informs the research. So this will then bring me to Nelly when we speak about the process of you kind of molding bread as your research to determine how you would to determine how you wanted your blanket to look like for the performance. So on that note, could you elaborate more kind of on the colors and the textures, the odors, the time that was associated with the molding process and how that influenced the performance?
Well, I initially started with bread. And I guess it was in winter. I don't know, there's a part of me that think mold happens faster in warmer climate. I think.
I wouldn't know. I studied art, so I don't know.
Me too. So the bread took longer, but then when I came to the studio at the UJ, then I started getting really obsessed. Then I collected some oranges, some fruits. What else? Strawberries. But what was common is that what first happens is, the color white first comes on. No, actually it depends. it depends on what it is. Sometimes it's like this green-gray color, and then sometimes it's white, which is not the color that you see, through a microscope. At least when I was watching most of the, actually including the movie. The movie was of Wrought. It was quite colorful. But in my experiences, it was very gray, and so I decided to create a blanket, with the same colors. The blanket was knitted, by Haneli Bakker. And then I remember saying to her already in the beginning that I would really like to be part of the process of her making the blanket, because actually I quite like the textures and I like the making. And then after, I think already in like 3 days, she had made something elaborate, maybe about a square meter. And then it occurred to me that it didn't have weight. Then I started thinking we have to layer it, with more threads. The threads were more organic. At least there was nothing plastic or synthetic by choice. I think you saw, especially in the second video, which really shows the real process, the biological process, that sometimes then, actually the discovery of the blanket, then suddenly it reminded me of a spider web, that, these are just like, almost like spider web-like representation, which then actually speaks to the network of corruption. It's an underworld that, has strange little networks and links that we don't quite understand. And then on top of that, actually, initially it was for weight, but then the glass beads are just too pretty. So we added some beads in the blanket. Mm-hmm. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did, because I asked about the textures and the colors. So we kind of, you did speak about the textures and how that kind of stimulates the sense of touch. So let's speak more about the sense of sound, of hearing, right? So the integration of sound and video, particularly with the ASMR element, adds a very unique dimension to the performance. So what drew you to that particular genre, and how did you decide to collaborate with Joshua for the ASMR? What does that do for you in the performance?
So how it happened is that it's not quite clear on the video. So Joshua has this table with 2 microphones. And what's on the table, it's actually junk food, and then some champagne and some alcohol. I don't know if we had whiskey or gin. And expensive cars, your Lamborghini, your 4x4s, your Porsches, toy-like. Actually, they were all toys. But for me, it's to also expose, you know, the grossness of tenderpreneurs, which I happen to have some connections with, not socially, but I refuse to party with them. Yes, so ASMR is about whispering, which then speaks to, when corruption happens, we don't see it, it's underground. It doesn't really link the person who's enabling it. We always arrest people that actually are not the end. Well, I guess everyone. It's such a network. Everyone is enabling each other. From the minister to the money launderer or the money washer, to to the tenderpreneur who has to be really connected to the minister, to the money launderer, to the supposedly then doing the job and half doing it and sometimes never doing it. So the video, I guess, zooms in to the ills of the corruption of the underground that we never see. In a way, that's why then the ASMR, him whispering, when I grow up, I want to be a tenderpreneur, which is quite cute. Yeah, the nature of ASMR is really to zoom in to what we possibly don't hear or don't see. Then juxtaposing it with me being on stage, and I guess I enable, or I'm enabling the mold or the wrought.
So I guess in a lot of respects, the performance is both political and poetic.
If you want.
I mean, that's essentially why we're all here today.
Political. Yeah. Yeah, ironical, metaphoric,
Yeah,
poetic. It's a metaphors also. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. We don't have much time left, so I'm going to open the floor to the audience for any questions, comments, contemplations. If you could just share them with us for the next 8 or 9 minutes or so. We have a gentleman here in front. My colleague will give you a microphone.
So from my perspective regarding Nelly, I presume the white guy will represent the state. And then the resources are basically, let's say, the budget, which is actually supposed to enable society to ensure that industrialization occurs for greater economic growth. However, the arrogance of state officials, it has come to a point where society and the citizens are decaying due to non-service delivery, and your representation underneath the cloth would represent the web of corruption, and therefore leads to a point where an individual cannot grow due to those imbalances, and therefore creates a shortage in terms of employment and basically the resources that's been spat out, is basically wasteful and fruitless expenditure, which leads to poverty, you know, and disparity in a sense, and deprivation. And I feel as if it's an insult. And when I do have the platform, I will speak up, you know, because I feel as if it's an injustice to black people, but more so to the economy. And I feel as if it's time for the youth to actually stand up and say, no, screw you guys, we're tired of you. Get off, get out. You know, because it's personal now, you know? And I'm not afraid of anybody.
We should all be taking it serious and
no, it's very
personal,
serious.
actually.
It is, to a point where one speaks up, one has to like look over their heads, because they could kill literally, you know, get rid of you, because you may be seen as a threat. But that's my point of view from your representation. But it's a fair point of view, but there are some that are fighting, you know, but it's just a bit
Not enough.
Then, there's a lot, just this, unions and all of that, and just a rotten few, but we will deal with them eventually as time goes by.
Yeah, thank you. On the question of, you know, the color of Josh, of course this, you know, I thought a lot about this. You know, I mean, I think someone after the show asked me, you know, why not a black person? I mean, and does it matter? And, you know, to have Josh doesn't mean that corruption is white. And to have him as a black man or a black woman doesn't mean that corruption is black. So in a way, because I'm black, maybe it was, for me, a little, it was a balance.
My point of view is that white people and black people are still corrupt. This is the face of corruption as black people. I feel as if that's just unfair and just disrespectful to those that are actually working and trying to create employment, which is like misleading to a point, and just unfair because it ridicules black people in the intelligence, which is an insult and distasteful.
Well, I think, you know, for me, it's the society, and society is all of us. You know that is also enabling corruption. I mean, how many of us have taken bribes from police? Just that simple gesture. You know, how many of us have done that? And then we want to scream about the big scale of corruption, but on an everyday basis, we're enabling it.
Thank you.
So for me, it's a mirror to us as a society.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Nelly. We have one more question.
Good evening, everyone. It's not a question, rather a remark.
All right.
What I loved about both the films, thank you so much, by the way. You guys have really made me look at decay in a different way, completely. And the disruption was actually very beautiful and personalized. So I'm taking a lot away, actually, tonight. But what I picked up and I noticed that is really staying with me on both films is how over time, as the mold grew or the decay grows, there's a shift and I think the second film calls it sort of like a reconstruction into something different, because I noticed in the first one that we've got when the mold, as the body, the physical body, then the movement gets up, the scientist, right? Sorry, I'm an artist as well, so I'm not quite sure. Yeah, the guy.
Let's just go with science.
Yeah, the guy in the lab coat begins to almost like regurgitate and spit the food out, you know, as it grows. And then in the second one as well, we begin to see as the animals or the fruit begin to decay, then we can also use that as compost for something new. So the beauty in the timing for such conversations and I think just to get back to what you have said is that it goes to show that once there's enough decay, eventually there is a resistance. And then that's when we begin to have the opportunity for drastic change. So 2024 is coming. The decay and the mold has risen, and we're going to see the drastic reconstruction. So I'm just taking it back to your point when it comes to the political stance, but also just that every single time the mold gets bigger, the good thing about it in both instances is that there's always time for major drastic change, and that's where we are. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So we have unfortunately run out of time. If there are any other questions or insights or contemplations you have, please do share it with either the three of us. Tonight will be lingering around, which obviously brings tonight to a close. I want to say thank you so much to the both of you for participating in today's programming and sharing your insights with us. Thank you to Goethe for graciously hosting us tonight. Thank you to Ross for helping us out with the sound and the projection. And thank you to everyone that has attended and participated and engaged. We really do appreciate it. We will be serving refreshments and goodies outside now in a bit. And we hope everyone gets home safely. And that's a wrap for Intra-actions 4.